The first picture is me sitting on a stump. In the background is the clothesline post. The second picture is me in front of a cedar bush holding a doll. And the third one, I think it's Ruth, is holding me by a haystack.
So do you want to tell us a little bit more about the farm? What kind of camera did they use to take these? What kind of camera did they use to take these pictures?
Well, June had a little box camera, and so did Agnes. But
and how many?
But June wouldn't have been old enough to take these, so it must have been Agnes that took them.
And so did they? How many pictures did they take every year, do you think?
Not very many.
Like how many do you think?
What?
How many do you think they took every year?
I have no idea.
So
usually they would take, the babies, and when we all got together, we would line up and have a picture taken.
And how old do you think you were when these pictures were taken?
Well, I must have been the first one I would say about 8 months, and the second one about, maybe 1.5 years or so.
But you look even smaller on the right one, right? You're more of a baby on the right one.
Yeah. I'm the oldest in the middle one.
I see.
These seem to be pretty much the same.
Yeah, this is picture 30.
30.
And this is just you with your doll. Mm-hmm. So what was your doll's name?
I have no idea.
That's cute. You have blonde hair, and you're pretty chubby.
Yeah.
So where on the farm was this taken?
Well, it looks like this looks like the driveway. We used to have cedar bushes all around the front yard.
Mm-hmm. So what time of year do you think this is?
What?
What time of year do you think it is?
What kind of...
What time of year? What season?
Oh, must be spring.
All right. Sounds good. Now I notice the pictures of you always have white clothes on.
Yes.
And why do you always wear white?
I have no idea. I guess that's what babies wore in those days.
I see. All right.
After all, it was 90 years ago.
That's true.
Well, they could have been yellow or pink.
That's true. All right. Now here's another picture.
Yes.
This is picture number 31.
31. That's me about, I'd say I'm a little older, maybe about between 2 and 3. And that's Snookums and cat, and the chickens in the background, and the pine trees are growing.
I see. Yeah, I do see the chickens. How many?
And I had this red chinchilla coat with the cap.
Oh, looks nice. How many chickens did you have on the farm?
Lots of them. Usually they bought about 100. I mean, they had them hatched at the nursery, and then they brought home the baby chickens.
You had 100 chickens?
At least.
And then where did you feed them?
Where do we feed them? Oh, cracked grain and corn and scraps,
So you didn't have, it wasn't actual chicken feed that you bought. You would.
Well, they would bring in the grain and the corn, and then they'd chop it. I mean, they'd mill it into smaller pieces, so it was sort of smaller, and that you just strew on the ground every day.
And then, did you get eggs from the chickens?
Lots of them. That's what we lived on.
I see. So you sold.
Yeah, every week we'd bring a big carton of eggs into town, and then we'd buy groceries and stuff with the.
Oh, I see. And then, what did you do with the chickens? Did you eat them too?
Yeah, well, we ate the young roosters. In fact, we never had much meat during the summer, but we always had chicken, and the hens were for laying. And when they got old and quit laying, we'd sell them. I don't know what they used them for. Maybe they made soup out of them or something. But anyway, once they were of a certain age, we'd get rid of them. But we got fresh ones every year.
I see. And then this was during the winter too, as well as the summer?
What?
The chickens, you had chickens during the winter and the summer?
Yes. We had a chicken house.
Oh, I see. And then tell us about your cat. Was that your only pet, or did you have other pets?
Well, that was my favorite.
How many cats did you have?
Well, we had usually maybe 3 or 4, but the cat would have kittens, and then you raise them, and I don't know, seems we had a lot of them.
I see. And what about dogs?
We never had dogs when I was little.
But you had a dog later on, though, right?
I had a dog when I was about 6 years old, I'd say.
Oh, I see. And tell us about the dog.
Well, Ruth found it at a place in Stillwater on a farm. So we went to pick it up, and we brought it to Agnes's, and I remember it wet on the floor, on the carpet, and that was quite a disaster. But
so you got it when it was a puppy?
yeah, but before that we had a dog. It was sort of a bulldog that we got from the Mobics. But he was impossible. He'd chew up the clothes on the line and do all kinds of bad things, so we gave him back. But then this dog was really, quite intelligent, and he was able to get along, and he was very good with the cattle and everybody. I mean, he was friendly, and when a car came into the driveway or the milk truck came in, he would shoo all the chickens out of the path, and he always knew what to do. You never had to teach him.
I see. What sort of breed of dog was he?
Oh, I don't know. He was just sort of kind of a collie, but kind of a more northern, I'd say, more like the Huskies. I mean, he survived the cold winters outside without any trouble. He'd always get this extra coat of fur, sort of woolly fur, and I don't know. He was never in the house, except when it was real cold, below zero. Then we'd have the food inside, but usually he always had it outside.
I see. And what did you feed the dog?
Well, just food scraps, you know. We never bought food for him. He had milk and stale bread and things like that.
I see.
But he was a good hunter. I mean, as far as small animals, when the muskrats would come from the lake going to the river, he would kill them, and then we'd save the fur and bring it to the county. There was a man who was in charge of them. So we'd bring the furs in and sell them.
Oh, I see, because they were trying to eradicate the muskrats?
No, we didn't mind the muskrats, but they were worth something.
Oh, I see.
And but mainly he'd kill the mice when we were going to sell grain. We'd I don't know. The mice would be running around the granary, and he'd catch them. I mean, he just would chew their necks, and he never ate them.
Oh, I see. Wow, very interesting. So, so growing up on the farm, you guys were pretty poor?
Well, it was during the Great Depression. In fact, when I was in high school, the teacher said, you kids have lived in the Depression all your life, and you just accept it. And that's true. We never had any money, but we were never hungry, and we always had plenty of food. We raised pigs that we slaughtered, and of course, during the winter, we'd freeze the meat outside, in the shed, and we'd have pork all winter long. And I was trying to think. One year we raised a steer and had beef, but once in a while we'd buy some wieners or roast when we went to town, but mainly we had chicken and eggs, the main diet.
Mm-hmm. So how big was the farm?
Well, the original farm was 80 acres, but Papa rented 200 acres of woodlands for the cattle. The people across the river owned the land, but they didn't use it, so we had lots of pasture for the cows. And also across the road from us, there was an old bachelor, and he sort of was retired, and we also would, when it was dry and not much grass, we would leave the cows out there, but you had to watch them. So I used to sit there during the summer all day following cows, and gave me a chance to read. And the main thing was to keep them from going into the fields where the crops were.
Oh, I see. So I remember Aunt Esther said that you younger kids didn't have to do as much farm work as the older
Well,
kids.
that's a myth. They always thought I never did any. Well, actually, we June did quite a bit of the farm work, more than I did. I sort of stayed inside with Mama. I used to do a lot of sewing and reading and that sort of thing. Going down to we lived about a good half mile from the mailbox. You had to go every day to get the newspaper and whatever mail they had. And we also would pick it up for Olson, and when we brought him mail, when he got some mail he really was looking for, he had an old bag of candy that he would give us a piece or maybe a nickel or something.
So this was the guy that lived across the road?
Yeah, well, he had moved in with his brother to the farm next to ours, but they didn't farm anymore. But they had a nephew who had a tractor, and they raised wheat, and I don't know. Olson was a real character, with a beard and everything, and he would loan money to the farmers to pay for their farms, and so he really was quite wealthy, but you would never know it. They would eat raccoons, and of course we never would think of eating squirrels or raccoons. And I remember my brother, he used to go over there once in a while, and they'd feed him raccoon meat.
Wow.
Yeah, and then he was an avid reader. I mean, he was real, Swedish. And when he'd come over and have some, coffee, and then Mama would give him the old Swedish newspapers. They always subscribed to one from Chicago. It was just a weekly paper, but they were just happy to have something to read in Swedish more than English. But we always had a newspaper.
Wow. So, but life was harder on the farm when your older sisters were there? Or
what?
You had less money, or you were poorer when your older sisters were young?
Well,
before you were born?
Well, they were still paying for the farm and everything. By the time I was born, the farm was paid off, and I mean, it was comfortable. We always were well dressed, and we would go to the movies once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And in church, but Papa used to say he'd rather take a walk in the woods than go to church. So I guess that's where we got our. We weren't very religious.
I see. So tell us about the actual house that you lived in the farmhouse. What was that like?
It was a 2-story house. It had a kitchen and a pantry and a small bedroom downstairs besides the living room, and a closet. And then upstairs was just one big room. we had three beds, but
So you had 3 beds, and how many people lived there?
well, there was Papa and Mama and Bobby and June and Hilda and Ruth. By that time, I think Esther was gone. But they would come every, when they had a day off, they would come on the bus to Stacy, and Papa would pick them up, and so they were there during weekends. But I can remember I always slept with Esther, so she must have been still home. And later with Ruth, Hilda had her own place. June was such a difficult child, so she insisted on sleeping with Mama, and so I always ended up sleeping with Esther or Ruth or somebody.
Did you have heat?
We had a wood stove. Papa would go in during the summer when the weather in mark trees, he would cut down and they would saw them. June used to help him saw. They had, the 2 people, one on each end, sawing, and then he'd haul them home on the sled, and then one of the neighbors had a sawing machine, and they cut it up into reasonable sizes, and Papa would split these for wood for the stove, and then we'd have large pieces for the heating stove. And that heating stove went up through the bedroom, so there was a little heat coming from there, but mainly we never froze.
So you had a wood cooking stove and a wood heating stove.
Yes.
And that's all you needed to keep the house warm.
Yeah.
Wow.